Oh, actually, it's evening. What am I saying? Good evening, everyone. I'm so sorry that we started a few minutes late. I just wanted to make sure that I had everyone checked off on our list. My name is Judy Blake, and I am the Leadership and Advocacy Coordinator with Family to Family Network. I am so happy that we have so many people that joined us this evening. My colleague, Leslie Lawson, there's Leslie.
Hello.
And I worked very hard to create a program that would be helpful to you, that would educate you, and that would empower you. So the fact that we have so many people on today, really, we are so grateful and so appreciative. I also wanted to introduce my other amazing colleague. In addition to Leslie, Christina Zavala.
Hello, hola.
And unlike Christina, she can speak Spanish and English. I cannot. So we have wonderful interpreters. Thank God for our interpreters, Anna Maria and Myrna. And they are translating as I go. So ladies, if there's any problem, just please put it in the chat box for me. So we want this to be a really safe place for all of the parents and anyone on this call. If you're an ECI coordinator, a parent, a community member, a self-advocate, maybe you're a person with a disability, we want you to be very comfortable and to know that this is a really safe space. No question is silly. No question is something that you shouldn't ask, because if you don't know the answer to something, it's possible that someone else doesn't either. So please know that you can ask anything that you want to ask. Tonight's presentation is called Special Education, What You Need to Know. And Leslie and I know that there is a lot of information that we are giving you tonight. We realize that. We know that many of you are just starting out. Maybe your loved one was diagnosed with a disability maybe a year ago. Maybe some of you have been told your loved one has a speech delay. Some of you might have autism. You could have a traumatic brain injury. But we want you to be educated. We want you to have hope, and we want you to be empowered. So we know that you're going to have questions, and we want you to ask those questions. But if you could, please wait until we're finished, because that way we can get through the material and then we can answer any questions. And if you feel uncomfortable asking a question, please private message myself or Leslie or Christina. Christina has to sign off at about 6:50. So if you have to ask a question, we want you to just private message Leslie or myself. I can read enough Spanish. It may not be the greatest, but I can certainly ask your question on your behalf. Thank you for muting yourself so that we can make sure that we hear our presentation for everyone else. Our goal is to finish in about an hour. I'm sorry, that says 1 p.m. That was for our other slide or our other training class. And but we hope to finish by about 7:15. We'll be sent the slides when the presentation is finished, and we will work on getting those slides translated in Spanish, but at least you're able to hear the presentation in Spanish. Next slide, please.
Judy, can you tell me, I can't see to put it in
Prevent your view. So yeah, so just go to slideshow at the very top.
Right, but my Zoom thing is covering it, and usually it goes away, but it's not going away.
Yeah, mine won't do anything. It's okay like this. There's nothing we can do. If you can't get it, it's okay.
Okay. Any idea, Christina?
You should be able to click your cursor on it and go up there and be able to move the Zoom thing so you can then see and slideshow and go to presenter view.
You.
Or you can even
Yeah,
do
there
it
you go, Leslie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, can you go to the bottom? I didn't know that. Yeah, and
Yeah,
just go
also.
to from beginning. There you go. Perfect.
Perfect.
Wonderful. There you go. So next slide. And then there you go. Okay, so we know that the school system and special education is filled with so many abbreviations. And we know it's overwhelming, but guess what? We're here to help. So one of the first abbreviations that you probably have already heard of is called ECI, and that stands for Early Childhood Intervention. So early childhood intervention is from birth to age 3 years old. The next abbreviation, my son is 26 years old, and just to give everyone perspective, I'm the single parent of a 26-year-old son who is my angel, and I love him dearly. And he has autism and he has other disabilities as well. Well, back when he was in school, they called it Preschool Program for Children with Disabilities. They called it PPCD. Now they call it Early Childhood Special Education. And the abbreviation for that is ECSE. So what we are trying to do tonight and Wednesday night and Thursday night is to educate you on this process of your child is leaving ECI and they are going to early childhood special education. So all of what we're going to be talking about is based on what we call another abbreviation, IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Please know this is the federal law. And the reason that we have this is to make sure that parents and the community, and in this case, ECI coordinators and any teachers, anyone, we know that the public schools are making sure that the educational needs of students with disabilities are met. And again, this is federal law. If you go to Missouri, it's the same law. If you go to California, same law. So this is federal. And you're going to be hearing these abbreviations throughout the remainder of this session and on Wednesday and Thursday. So if your child is diagnosed with a disability and is receiving what we call early childhood special education services, the school is going to have what we call an ARD meeting, ARD, and that stands for admission, review, and dismissal. Next, Leslie. During that ARD meeting, they are going to discuss your child's IEP, and that stands for Individualized Education Plan. So what that means is, for example, for Claudia's child, or Yoselin's child, or Ingie's child, or Rosia's child, they're going to make sure that the plan discussed during the ARD meeting is based on what your child's needs are. Not your friend's child, not what they think works for the class, but specifically for your child. And it's called an IEP. So this is a term that some of you may never have to encounter, but we wanted to include it because sometimes this does happen. Suppose your child, they may not be at age 3 or 4 or however old your child is, but it's possible that as they get older, or maybe even now, they might have some challenging behaviors. Well, parents, teachers, we would want to know what's causing those behaviors. What is causing your child to act in a way that could be disruptive to the class, could be harming them, harming another student, where they're not really learning. So that is called an FBA, a functional behavioral assessment. Like I said, that may not be something that your child ever has, but if you have a child that might be really aggressive or does a lot of hitting at home or hitting in class, they might do what they call a functional behavioral assessment. And what they do with that is they take those results and they create what we call a behavior intervention plan, a BIP. The reason they have that is so that teachers know what to do in order to help your child succeed in class. Please know that regardless of your child's disability, your child can go places and do things that you may never have even thought of. And it's really important to remember that. My son was diagnosed with autism when he was 13 months old. And he graduated high school and he worked for 3 years and he volunteers at a dog shelter and he goes to the movies. Well, at least pre-COVID, he went to the movies. We go out to eat and we do everything typical young men do. Please know that your child can also. So remember when we talked about, and Leslie, was there anything that you wanted to add?
No, that's great.
Okay, please do interrupt me anytime.
Okay.
So remember what I mentioned about the federal law being IDEA, the Individual with Disabilities Education Act. Leslie, the next part. So remember, federal law, it ensures that children with disabilities have available to them a free, appropriate public education. And that education emphasizes special education and related services, and it's made to meet their needs, not somebody else's needs, not the other kids in the class, but your child's unique needs. And the purpose of IDEA is to prepare them for further education, for employment, and independent living. Now, is it possible that your son or daughter doesn't want to go to college? Mine didn't, and that's okay. But the purpose of the Individual with Disabilities Education Act is to prepare them for that. So when you have your ARD meetings each month, you're always thinking of what is the future plan? Because I tell you, the future comes before you know it, and time just flies by. Your child may be 3 or 4 now, but before you know it, they're going to be 17 or 18 years old. So right now, many of you right now are, you have children who are 3, and they are what we call transitioning from ECI, which is early childhood intervention, and they're transferring to the public school. So what happens with that? So your ECI service coordinator, some of you, I think most of the people I've talked to, maybe not all of you, but most of you have already had a planning meeting. And that planning meeting should happen at least 90 days before your child turns 3. So if your child turns 3, for example, December 5th, and you haven't had any meeting with your service coordinator about what school they're going to go to or a meeting with the school district, I would reach out to your ECI coordinator tomorrow and ask them about that. So this meeting can't happen 9 months before, not more than 9 months before. And the meeting is for parents to meet the school district people. So many of you are part of Houston ISD, Cypress Fairbanks, A-Leaf. Some of you may be from Katy. And just know that at this meeting, it's the parent, the child's therapist, if you want them to. Maybe you have a speech therapist for your child and you would like them to attend. You have your ECI coordinator, and then you also have a public school representative that should attend the transition meeting. And you can invite other people, even though this isn't really the case, but you certainly can invite who you want. Please know that as parents, you know your child best, and you can invite who you want to the meetings so that you are comfortable. So your ECI service coordinator is going to develop a plan with you. And that plan is going to help your child transition out of the early childhood intervention program and to see what is the next step. And it probably will be special education services. So they're going to help you learn about these services, look at other options in the community, and see what else needs to be considered as your child ages out of the ECI program. And if your child is eligible for these special education services, they must refer you to your local school district with your consent. So what I mean by consent is with your permission. Please know that the school can't do anything unless you, the parent, say, yes, you have my permission. And they should be getting that permission in writing from you. Okay. I was going to go over that document if you can go back. And
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to mention that one document at the bottom. Yes. So make sure that you check this document, and it's terrific. It's a great website called navigatelifetexas.org. Please know it is in multiple languages. It is in Spanish, Chinese, Hindi, Urdu. It is in probably 23 different languages. So Navigate Life Texas can tell you beyond the early childhood intervention program and what your next steps are. Next slide, please. So the timeline is really important. Schools can't just make up their own timeline because remember, they have to follow the law. So when the school receives notice from your early childhood intervention provider or your coordinator, they must evaluate your child within 45 days of receiving that notice. So what they've conducted to evaluate your child is what we call a full and individual evaluation. It's called an FIE. And they're going to evaluate your child in every area of suspected disability. So say your child has a speech delay, they're going to check that. If there might be some type of intellectual delay, they're going to check for that. And those other abbreviations that I explained to you, once they have done this evaluation for your child, they're going to hold an admission, review, and dismissal meeting, an ARD, to discuss your child's plan. And it's going to be done within 30 days of the evaluations being completed. And this is really helpful to parents because what we don't want is a child being evaluated, say in September, and not having an ARD meeting until January. That's too long. That's way too long. It needs to be within those 30 days. So if your child is transitioning from early childhood intervention to the public school and your child qualifies for special education services, the school must allow your child to start school on their 3rd birthday. And this means 3 years old. So if
there was a document at the bottom of the other one.
Oh, okay, thank you.
That's okay. It's not, it was on the other one.
Oh, okay, great. And again, please know that you don't have to be writing all of this down. You will be given the slides. So please do not worry. So suppose you're on this call and maybe you just moved to Houston a month ago and your child turns 3 in December. We do have families in that situation. So they don't have an ECI coordinator. You didn't
Or if their
receive,
child's older.
or, thank you, Leslie, or say you moved here from Louisiana, your child is 5 years old or 4 years old, and you don't have an ECI coordinator, because remember, that's up until age 3. What you would want to do is request an evaluation and to see if your child is eligible for special education services. And you must submit a written request to your child's school. So what we mean by your child's school is your zoned school. And what you always want to do is, Google is one of my best friends. You put in your zip code, because some people, they're like between 2 schools, between 2 elementary schools. So make sure you look and make sure you have the right school. You can always call your closest elementary school and you can say, we are new to Houston. We live on this street. This is our zip code. Are you our zoned school? And I promise you, they will tell you. But you want to make sure that you email them. And the reason I say email, excuse me, is because it's not as though you can just call somebody and say, hi, I'm Mrs. Smith, and I would like you to evaluate my child. They need to have it in writing, because remember, they must have your permission. And anything that you communicate with the school, it's really, really important that it's in writing, because you always want to have what we call a paper trail. And you always want to make sure that you keep records of everything that you've sent to the school. Thank you for putting that in there, Edgar. I appreciate it. So thank you so much. So once the school receives your written request, they have 15 school days to provide you with an opportunity to provide written consent for that full and individual evaluation, the FIE, that evaluates every area of suspected disability. And if the school refuses to conduct that evaluation, they must provide you a notice of what we call the procedural safeguards that explains what your rights are under the law. There's a number of things that Leslie and Christina and I want you to remember tonight, but one of the most important things to remember is that as a parent, you do have rights. And these rights are listed in the procedural safeguards. They tell you what you do if you disagree with the school's decision, because it's okay to disagree with them. We can't agree on everything. The school has 45 school days to conduct the evaluations after the parent signs consent. And then they have 30 calendar days to have that. I know these abbreviations get very confusing, but the ARD IEP meeting, the ARD is the admission review dismissal, and the IEP is the individualized education plan. After the evaluations are complete, to review the results, determine eligibility, and develop an IEP if the child is eligible. So that's why we have these rules, so that your rights are protected and your child is evaluated in an appropriate time frame. So it's really important for parents to remember a number of things. You want to always keep copies of all written documents for your records. And if you have something from your neurologist, something from your pediatrician, something from your speech therapist, suppose you're from out of state, suppose your child is older, anything that you want to bring, it's really important that the school should have that so they can see the history of your child. So make sure that you always keep those written documents for your record. And please know that anyone can make a referral for evaluation. Suppose your child, maybe your child is now 4 years old and you think something isn't right, you can ask for an evaluation. There is no cost. And if you feel there is a suspected disability, early intervention is so important. So there's a big difference between, remember when I mentioned on the previous slide, an FIE, which was a full and individual evaluation, and the next sentence that we have here, a REED, R-E-E-D, and that stands for Review of Existing Evaluation Data. So that can be part of an initial evaluation or any future evaluation, but all it's doing is reviewing the existing records that the school has. That is not an evaluation of itself. So please know that. You have the right to ask what examinations or tests will be used and how they will be used to develop that individualized education program or plan for your child. If you don't know, ask questions. You have the right to know. It's no different than going to the pediatrician and then telling you your child needs their whatever shots. Well, chances are you're going to ask, okay, Dr. So-and-so or Dr. Jones, what shots does my child need? So it's really important to ask, what tests are you going to have done for my child?
And that should be listed on the consent form. And it's really important if they're missing an evaluation that you think needs to be done. Like, for instance, let's say if you think your child might have autism, you want to ask them to add that at that time, because you don't want to get through the whole 45 days and then have to add another evaluation later. Or if they've already evaluated in several areas, but they didn't include speech or OT or PT, and you feel that's something important, ask them to add that.
Great point, thank you. The school must send you a written notice when they recommend or decline a full initial and individual evaluation, or suggest a screening instead of that full individual evaluation. The school must have your written consent before completing any evaluation. Again, these are all part of your rights. So if you say to the school, okay, and I'm just picking a name, Green Elementary, I would like you to evaluate my child, and you send that in writing to the school. And what you typically can do is call up the school and ask for the person in charge of special education. You can also possibly send it to the principal, maybe a guidance counselor or a social worker at the school. But you can send it to those people. And if they refuse to evaluate your child, they have to tell you in writing why they won't.
And tell you what to do if you disagree.
Exactly. And that's where those procedural safeguards come into play. So you do have due process rights in every step of the special education process, meaning if you disagree with something, there is an answer to how you go about disagreeing and the steps that you need to take. So what areas of need might your child need to be evaluated? And just remember, no two children are the same. It's different for each child. These are just some of the areas that your child might need to be evaluated in. Gabriella, is it a quick question? If you want to unmute yourself, that's okay. Oh, Gabriella raised her hand, Myrna and Anna Maria. So I don't know if she raised it by accident. But
no. Hello. Yes, I'm so sorry, but no puedo escuchar la traducción en español, se me entrecorta. No sé si soy yo solamente o es todo, pero no, escucho un pedazo y se me cae, escucho otro pedazo y no le escucho, pero en inglés sí le escucho el fondo todo completo, entonces no sé por qué.
I don't know, but I'm having trouble understanding the interpretation in Spanish. It kind of breaks out in and out. Sometimes I hear something, sometimes I don't. But when I switch to the English channel, I am able to hear it all. I don't know why.
I don't know why either. I don't think anyone else is having that issue. Have you, at the bottom of your screen, has she put Spanish on the globe?
Oh, sí, o sea, sí, yo lo
Okay.
al principio escuchaba bien cuando estaba la otra.
Okay, muchas gracias. Thank
No
you,
sé qué pasa.
Gabriela.
At the beginning, I was hearing fine when the other lady was speaking, but.
Okay, yes, okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, muchas gracias. Okay, so your child might need to be evaluated in autism, speech, fine motor with their hands, gross motor, physical therapy, adaptive behavior. They need to have an IQ evaluation. Some might have a reading disability, social skills. So it's really important that you know what areas the school plans to evaluate, because if they miss an area that you're concerned about, tell them. Don't be shy about it. This is your time to get an evaluation for your child and get them the help that they need. So the parents' rights during the evaluation process. Leslie, I think you were going to take this slide, I believe.
Okay.
I think so.
During the evaluation process, these are only going to be a few of your rights, but to see more, you can go to the IDEA manual. We're going to send you the link to that or a copy of that. And on page 33, you can see all of your rights. But you do have a right to be given written notice before the school evaluates your child or refuses to evaluate your child. They pretty much have to, because if they refuse to and you use your procedural safeguards, they're going to do it. They should do it, but it does have to be in writing. If it's not in writing, the timeline does not start. The clock doesn't start ticking until they get it in writing. So it's really important. A lot of people tell me, oh, I've asked several times. Well, did you put it in writing? You have to put it in writing. You have the right to be given information about all areas that are going to be evaluated, all skills and abilities and areas. Be given descriptions, explanations of the procedures, tests, and reports that are going to be used. The reason I think this is really important is when my son was 3 years old and he was evaluated, they used a verbal IQ test and he was nonverbal. So that test wasn't really valid, but I didn't know enough at that time to question it. So we hope you'll take a look at everything and explore your options about you. There are websites where you can see what tests are for what areas and for what age, and we're going to give you a link to that. You should be given, and if they're not given to you, you ask in writing, of course, to be given a copy of the evaluation reports before the ARD meeting, so you have time to review and understand the results before the meeting, because you don't want to go, you want to go in there with all the same information that everybody else at the table has. You don't want to be in there trying to catch up and they're just moving along the ARD agenda and you feel left behind. And you don't want to be surprised at what the evaluations come back and tell you about your child. So it's really important to get a copy before you go to that meeting. And at least 5 days, so you have time to look at it. and you may have questions, and you could always ask the diagnostician ahead of time if you have questions, just so you'll be on the same page. So you should have all the results of the evaluations considered at the meeting, including any outside evaluations you get from professionals who do not work from the school. For the school, they don't have to necessarily go along with those recommendations, but they do have to consider the information, and it should be part of the discussion. And you should have all the evaluations and test materials in the language that's most likely to provide the most accurate information on your child and what they can do and what they know. And you want to be assured that evaluations and tests that are used are appropriate for your child, and no single test such as IQ should be used as the only basis for determining eligibility.
Thank you, Leslie. So this is a really great website. I actually have to get my little magnifying glass here because the print is tiny.
Oh, can't hear you when you lean in.
Oh, sorry. Your child, if your child has autism, there's a really great website called txautism.net.
But it's good for everybody.
It is. It's great for everybody because it tells you all the different kinds of evaluations, interventions. It's great for teachers. And I believe it is in English and Spanish. So we wanted to make sure that you had that as well. And the website link is at the bottom of the page. And what I will be doing is tonight or tomorrow, I'll be sending all of these slides to you in PDF format. So you should be able to just click on it and then the website will come right up. Okay, so your child has been evaluated. What can you do if you think the school's evaluation is incomplete? You don't think they're right? And you don't agree with their recommendation? You can ask the school to do more testing. You can ask the school to pay for an independent education evaluation. We call this an IEE. Now this doesn't mean that you look up on Google and you pick somebody and then you try to send the school the bill. It doesn't work like that. You let the school know that you want an independent education evaluation. They're going to give you a list, or you tell them who you want to use. Chances are they probably know the person anyway. And then it's arranged that way. Again, make sure you put it in writing because you want to make sure that you get reimbursed if you have to pay for that testing, but chances are the school's going to pay for the testing up front. So that IDEA manual that we talked about in the beginning, pages 34 to 38. And we're going to be sending you links for all of this information, but the IDEA manual is in both English and Spanish. So these independent education evaluations, they are done by qualified people who are not employed by the school. Because I know sometimes you might think, oh, great, they're just going to hire somebody they know to agree with them. This isn't the case. No qualified person is going to put their reputation on the line by completing an independent evaluation just to agree with the school. They're going to make sure that it is accurate and they have their credentials behind it so that you know it was a sound, good evaluation. You can ask the school where to get this independent evaluation, or you can get it done by someone not recommended by the school, as long as the person meets the qualifications. Again, make sure that everything is in writing. So the school must grant this independent evaluation. If they don't, you can ask for what we call a due process hearing to show that their evaluation was appropriate. But generally, we have found that the school grants that independent evaluation because it's going to cost them a lot more to get an attorney involved and to go through a due process hearing. So again, this is all part of knowing your rights. So the ARD IEP meeting, remember ARD is admission review dismissal. IEP is individual education plan. What you might want to do is meet with someone at your child's school before the meeting. You want to discuss goals. You want to learn more about the curriculum for your child's grade level. You remember, you are an important member of this committee. You know your child, you live with them. And for those of you on this call where English is not your first language, that does not matter. It makes no difference. You make sure that you get documents in a language that works for you, that you understand. This is your right. If my child was young and all of a sudden I moved to Mexico or I moved to Italy, you think I would want those documents in a language I didn't understand? Absolutely not. So know that you're an important member of the committee and that that meeting must be scheduled at a time and date that works for you and for the school. So if you're working during the day, they've got to work something out. Maybe it's done early in the morning. Maybe it's done after the school day. If you need an interpreter, please let the school know before the meeting. But absolutely, you should have an interpreter if you do not think you're going to understand English. And that's really important. Make sure that you get copies of all evaluation reports, that draft of present levels of your child's performance, a draft of those goals and objectives in writing before the meeting, because you don't want to just walk in and being given all of this paperwork and you've never even looked at it before, because they'll want you to agree to it. Well, how do you know if you want to agree to it? This is the first you're seeing it. You want to make sure that you get that information, those goals before the meeting so that you can take a look at them, so that you can ask questions, make comments, provide input. You are an equal member of that team helping your child in school. I know that it's really overwhelming sometimes to go to these meetings. It's you and you've got, 6 or 7 people sitting around the table, and that can be really hard. So bring someone, bring your neighbor, bring a family member. If you can bring someone who knows your child to the meeting with you, that's great. But if you can't, just bring a good friend. It's really nice to have that emotional support. And make sure that all required members of the committee will be there. The IDEA manual, which you can find online in English and Spanish, tells you exactly who should be at that meeting. There shouldn't be people coming in and out all the time. So when I talked earlier about the notice of procedural safeguards, again, these are your rights. So you have the right to be provided in writing when the school wants to do something or refuses to do something. If the school decides to make a change or refuses to make a change. You must be given prior written notice. It's page 2 of your procedural safeguards, and this is in English and Spanish. So the identification, does your child have a, whoops, sorry, Leslie. The identification, does your child have a disability or need special education to benefit? The evaluation, the placement of your child. You must be given notice on this. and the child is provided a free, appropriate public education. Now, I realize that some of you may feel that the school isn't providing everything that you want. It's really hard because sometimes appropriate means different things to different people. So that's where the challenge can sometimes begin, because maybe your child is getting speech therapy once a week and you believe they need it at least 2 or 3 times a week. Talk through it with the school. Explain why this is important. They have to justify why they think your child does not need that and put it to you in writing.
And that's where an IEE could come in.
Exactly. That independent education evaluation that, remember, the school pays for. So they need to let you know why they're making a decision. Everything should be based on assessing your child and collecting data. Collecting data means collecting information about your child. So if they don't have any information to back up why they want to do something, well, I would go for an independent evaluation to find out. They need to describe other choices that the IEP committee should be considering and why they may be rejecting those choices. Please know you can get this written in your native language. Next slide.
Okay, this is to help you, this diagram is to help you understand the whole process of the meeting. So you're going to have first your evaluation, and everything is built on top of that. From your evaluation, then you're going to develop your present levels of academic and functional performance. What can your child do now? What do they have struggle with? What do they struggle with? How do they do things? And then based on that information, then you're going to develop measurable annual goals and then short-term objectives. So everything should link together. The evaluation should give you information for the PLAF, the present levels. The present levels should help you develop annual goals and short-term goals, short-term goals. And this is just kind of how a diagram to show you how everything's built on that foundation of a good evaluation and ongoing data collection. And then the present levels, the goals and objectives. And then next would come supplementary aids and services. So that could be like your OT, PT, speech. Maybe your child needs in-class support from a paraeducator. And then very last, after you've done all of this, would you decide on the placement, which would be where your child is going to receive these services, because special education is a service, not a place. So different kids receive their services in different places. And we already,
sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Judy.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just trying to help if you want. And Rocio asked a question that, why don't we go ahead and answer that now? Thank you, Rocio. He asked, does an IEE, which is an independent education evaluation, have to be full evaluation, or can it be done only for a related service like speech?
Yes, it can. And a lot of times that happens, like maybe you miss something in the initial evaluation and down the road you see that your child's, let's say, struggling with behavior and you need a formal functional behavioral assessment. They're not going to grant an IEE though until they've done their evaluation. And so, but it could be, you don't have to have the whole thing done. You may only, if they do a full evaluation and speech is part of that, and like that happened with me, we agreed that he needed speech, but they only wanted to give him once a week for 20 minutes in a group. And I didn't think that was appropriate. So you could then ask for an IEE from a private speech pathologist, and they would pay for that and see what they come up with. What do they recommend? You know, so that helped my son get speech 3 times a week, 2 one-on-one, and then the 3rd time in a group. So yeah, it doesn't have to be for the whole thing. It could be for different parts of the evaluation that you don't agree with. And we've already talked a bit about the read and how it's not an evaluation. And the reason we bring that up again is the school is required to do an evaluation, not more than once a year, but at least every 3 years. But sometimes what we find is they'll do the read, because a read is a very important part of an evaluation, but it's not any new evaluation. So for instance, down the road, if they do a read, I don't want you to think that is any new evaluation, because I find that a lot of parents think that the school's done new evaluations where they've only done a read. So that is definitely something to make sure about. If there's any new formal evaluation, there should be reports for that. And somebody has a question.
Yes, so Ana Maria or Myrna, Yvonne speaks Spanish. So could you ask her question for us?
You'll have to unmute.
Yeah, unmute yourself, Yvonne. Yvonne? I think you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. Sí, la traducción a español se corta, empieza bien como hace rato y se corta. Ya después sí te escuchaba bien, pero otra vez está fallando.
I'm having trouble with the interpretation in Spanish. It just cuts off. It goes well for a while and then it starts shorting up.
Gosh, yo lo siento. I don't know why it's doing that. I don't know if there's a Zoom problem. I don't know. I'm so sorry. And Karina Astudillo, sorry, I think is saying the same thing. Se escucha entrecortado, no se escucha bien la traducción en español. Same thing. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I don't know why that's happening, Yvonne.
What's happening, Judy?
Well, they all of a sudden can hear it and then they don't hear it. And then they hear it and then they don't hear it. I don't know why that's happening. I'm very sorry.
Hello.
And then Gabriella, did you have a question?
Yes, I think maybe it's the connection that people is translate because the first lady introduction, I can hear her, but the another interpreter, I can hear you because it's, I don't know the word.
Okay, I
Okay.
think that they can hear Ana María fine. Te oye a ti, oyen bien a Ana María, pero no me oyen bien a mí. They don't hear me.
I don't know why,
I'm gonna
Myrna.
switch to, okay, what we're gonna do, we're gonna switch to Ana María so that we don't have that problem, okay?
Okay, thank you. We're almost done. Thank you. So additional considerations, you know, all students must be considered for assistive technology, extended year services, meaning during the summer, graduation. For some students, you might have auditory, autism, behavior, communication, limited English proficiency, and vision. So these are other areas that can be considered as well. So this is really helpful. It's called the Autism Supplement, and it's strategies for students with autism. I encourage parents and teachers to look at this And this is really also for everyone. Maybe you just have a child that has challenging behaviors, and they talk about positive behavior supports, parent and family training and support. But the committee must consider each of these 11 strategies, and the need to use a strategy should be determined by the student's individual education plan. And if the ARD committee decides that that strategy is not needed, then what they're going to do is a functional behavior assessment. And remember, we talked about that. And then they're going to implement a behavior intervention plan. So if your child has behaviors that are interfering with their learning, you can ask in writing for a formal functional behavioral assessment. It's that FBA that we talked about. And there's only certain people that can do this. They're licensed school psychologists, behavior analysts, so that teachers and staff, and including parents, can work with your son or daughter and develop a behavior intervention plan and use those positive behavior supports. So okay, that's okay. You always want to make sure that your child is placed in the least restrictive environment. So under we've talked about Individual with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, that all children who require special education services, they need to be educated in the least restrictive setting appropriate for their individual needs. So it says that each public agency shall ensure that the maximum extent appropriate for children with disabilities are educated with children who are not disabled. So what that means is if your child has autism or a learning disability or an intellectual disability, if you believe they should be in general education, this must be considered.
We're going to talk a lot more about this in the second session.
Absolutely, but we just wanted to touch on it now. So preschool options. Early childhood special education and PPCD, which is preschool program for children with disabilities, is not a place. Your child is receiving a service, and that's what special education is. They can be provided in a variety of settings. So you might have a child that has dual enrollment, so that children may stay at home or attend a private preschool at the family's expense while receiving special education and related services through the school district. So we did this for my son. He went to a private preschool in the morning. I picked him up at lunchtime. He had his lunch in the car, and then he went to an afternoon school program at our local elementary school. So Head Start programs, they usually have income requirements for participation. So like some Head Start programs, they might be a charter school, it could be Baker Ripley, but these can be offset by the fact that Head Start programs are required to have at least 10% of the student population as children with disabilities. So if you believe that you want your child not to be at their local elementary school and you want them to be at a Head Start program, that is your right. And the school has to follow the law. So pre-kindergarten, other programs for children that are ages 3 to 5 that may be offered by the school district, specific eligibility requirements, but often children with disabilities may participate. So a segregated placement on a specific campus in your school district, and it may not be your home school that only has children with disabilities, that is an option to you. But it may not be at the closest school to you because maybe they don't have that early childhood special education program. It may be 15 minutes away, but the school district must provide transportation. I believe we're going back over 20 years now, but it had to be at least 3/4 of a mile or something like that. And my son went on the bus because we were just over 3/4 of a mile. We literally lived down the street from the school. But it was a way for my son to get on the bus and to show that independence.
And the reason we talk so much about least restrictive environment, or we will talk so much more about it, is because children that are in a segregated environment are not going to have the same high expectations. They're not going to have typical peers with appropriate social skills, speech, behavior. So that's why, if possible, if you can have your child in a regular education placement with the supports and services that they need, then they will be on the path to go to college, hopefully. So it's really important. I mean, for me, I wasn't raising my child to go live in a segregated setting like a state supported living center or a state school. I want him to grow up in the community, in the neighborhood community, in the regular ed school community. And he received a lot of his services in regular ed. And now that he's an adult, he's able to participate in the community, and he's not living in a segregated environment. And so he has a lot of choices and options.
We are just about at the end of our presentation, and we want you all to have high expectations for your child. No child ever rises to low expectations. And just because your child has a disability, that doesn't mean they can't succeed, that they can compensate for that disability. They can participate in the community. It just means they might take a little bit longer. They might need some modifications to their curriculum. They might need some adjustments. But your child can go many places. And we never want parents to forget that they can achieve so much with the right support and with the right tools and the right accommodations. And as parents, you are an important part of that decision-making process. So make sure that you familiarize yourself with the pre-kindergarten curriculum, or if your child's going into kindergarten. Children with disabilities may need accommodations or modifications. So accommodations are like if your child might need preferential seating. Like it always worked best for my son to sit in the front of the class. It was less distracting. A modification as he got older was, say, for example, they were given spelling words. So instead of maybe 15 spelling words, maybe he got 8 or 10 spelling words. That's what a modification is. But all preschoolers benefit from a language-rich classroom that promotes speech and early reading. Good preschool programs teach developmental skills through play. All of our children need to learn how to get along and to interact and play with each other. So transportation is a related service that should be discussed at the IEP meeting, and I touched on it just a few minutes ago. The district is obligated to provide transportation in most cases. But what we mean by in most cases is if you're trying to get something from a completely different district, but for the people on this call, that should not be an issue. At the end of every ARD, admission review dismissal meeting, and every IEP meeting, that individualized education plan, you have to sign your name and check one of two boxes. You agree or you disagree. We always encourage parents to work with the school, and that schools are doing the best that they can with the limited resources that they have. But if you don't understand or you don't agree, you can check disagree. That plan that is for your child, it's a legal document and the school must follow it. So if you don't agree with it, please don't sign agree and sign your name. And then again, referring back to that IDEA manual, pages 75 to 81, and we've listed the link below. But you
do want to check. You do want to check one box or the other because you don't
Right.
want to leave it blank and let them check it for you.
Exactly.
So,
And if you don't understand something, ask questions. And if you don't agree, it's okay. So skip that. My apologies. So let's skip over that link. Okay. So I believe we are at the end. Leslie, if you want to stop sharing your screen.
okay.
So do we have the PowerPoint slides in other languages? I would love to share with our ECI service coordinator. You must be an ECI coordinator.
Oh, we can't hear you, Judy, when you
Oh,
turn.
sorry. Edgar must be an ECI coordinator. So Edgar, I'm so glad you that you came on. Please make sure that you private message me your phone number and your email. So right now, I only have the presentation in English. And to my Spanish speaking parents, yo lo siento, my apologies. We are in the process of getting it translated into Spanish. So we will be doing that. For some reason, I couldn't get the survey link to work properly. I don't know why, forgive me. I'm going to send you all an email tonight, and I'm going to include the slides in English, at least you'll have them. And I'm going to include the survey link. Please, 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 por favor, por favor, por favor, please complete the survey. That is how Leslie and I learn. That is how we grow. I cannot tell you how grateful we are that we had 18 people tonight in both English and Spanish and heritages coming together to learn. We are so grateful to all of you for your time. Our next class will be Wednesday at 6 p.m. Please log on a little early so I can make sure everyone's registered. And then our final class will be on Thursday. We will try to make sure that all of the interpretation is working properly. I am very, very sorry for what happened. So the recording, unfortunately, Zoom does not allow us to record in Spanish to what the interpreters were saying. And I'm very sorry, but unfortunately, I have no control over that. But you will have it in English and you have the slides. I will get them to you in Spanish.
Judy.
Yes.
I was going to say the great thing too about taking the survey is I think one of the last questions is what you still need. And so you can
Yes.
put your questions there and we'll cover them next time.
Yes, thank you, Leslie. Great reminder. So yes, for the survey that I'm going to be sending you, please, please, please complete it. Does anyone have any questions that we can answer? We want to be respectful of your time. If there are any questions that you have, you can unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can private message Leslie or myself. Jessica and Rosia. So just
So Judy, I know it has nothing to do with today's topic, but I know that you're sending the slides for today's topic.
yes, ma'am.
For topic number 3, I know you sent me the slides, but I couldn't open the slides, and I couldn't see anything for that. So I don't know if you're sending the I still have the same problem.
So Jessica, I apologize. I'm not quite sure that I understood.
I got it, Judy. She
Yeah, well-
couldn't open the third, in the email you sent, she couldn't open the third presentation. So we need to check that out. I'll see if I can open mine.
So Jessica, this is your second time attending? Jessica?
Yes,
Yeah.
this is my second one. So my first one was on topic 3, and I missed
Okay,
topic 1 and 2, and I ended up catching topic 3.
okay.
So I'm
I'll
just
check
looking
on
at
that
topic
for
1
the
now.
third presentation. I'm so sorry because nobody, let me see what happened. Thank you, Jessica.
So I was just, that's why I was asking, maybe like, because if you send me the slides, I don't know, couldn't even get back to you and let you know.
Oh, okay, no
Yeah.
problem. Did you attend all 3 sessions last time or just the last one?
Just the last one, so that's why I'm attending today, and then I'll attend Wednesdays.
Thank you for telling me that. I apologize. I appreciate that, Jessica. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rocio, what can I answer for you, or what can Leslie and I answer for you?
So recently there's been there was a change due to related services that were missed for a lot of our kids that were out of school, and they're talking about compensatory services right now. And as far as I understood, because I read, you know, what TEA put out, like on the saying, you know, if there was, as far as progress had stopped, right? Is what I understood, like in speech or in OT. Well, it depends on the related service, of course. But is it right for, I mean, I don't know, or is it, from what I'm hearing from the school, is saying that it should be, that it's, that I, as a parent, I have to prove that there was regression.
No, I thought, Leslie?
I don't think so. So if it's my understanding, compensatory services are given to make up for what they didn't get. So for instance, I'll give you an example with my son. He was supposed to be, he had goals related to reading. When I started asking questions about the reading program and what they were using and were they using it with any integrity. And then I found, by asking all these questions, I found out they really weren't using any peer-reviewed research-based program, and they weren't using it for the right amount of time and the right amount of days. And so I asked for compensatory services, and they gave us, they came up with a number of hours to make up. Now, if they've missed certain therapies, how many have they missed? You know, they should have notes on every one that they've done to prove that they did it, because a lot of times they're billing Medicaid for that, so they have to keep records. So if another example is one time a parent in HISD, their student qualified for speech therapy. They didn't have a speech therapist. They were short of speech therapists, but guess what? That's not our fault. Lack of funds or lack of personnel is not a reason to deny something to our kids. And they wanted to just make it up in the summer. And the parent said, no, that's not appropriate. So she filed a complaint with the Texas Education Agency. Anytime you have to file a complaint, you have to put what the remedy to that complaint, what you feel should happen. And she asked for the school to pay for private speech, and they paid her, they agreed with her, and they paid her mileage also for her to have to drive her child back and forth. So compensatory services is to make up for what the child didn't get.
And we're going to be covering some of that, Rocio, in Wednesday and Friday of different organizations that can help you should you feel your child was not served properly. Absolutely. Gabriela, did you have a question as well?
Oh, sí, quería preguntar porque me había quedado como una duda cuando dicen que cuando se vaya a la reunión de ARD esa reunión es después que al niño le hacen la evaluación en el distrito o tiene que
con eso o es una reunión diferente?
Uno momento, Gabriela.
Judy, can you go to English? Can you hear me in English?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. She's saying, is the art meeting after the evaluation has been made, the IEP, or is it at the same time, or how is that order? How does that happen?
Do you want to answer that, Leslie, or do you want me to take it?
I couldn't hear it.
Oh, yeah. She wanted to know what's the order of the ARD meeting and the IEP and everything. So what happens, Gabriella, is that before the ARD meeting, you should be given everything that the school wants to discuss. So you have a chance to review it.
She's going to have to ask for that in writing normally,
Okay.
typically.
So ask for it in writing.
Email's fine.
Email is fine, and email the school and tell them before the ARD meeting, you want the everything that's going to be discussed. Oh, is there a name for that particular paperwork?
So you want me
Go
to?
ahead, Leslie.
So evaluation reports, you want copies of all the evaluation reports. You want a copy of the PLAF, which is the present levels of academic. These are going to be drafts, of course. Now, the evaluation reports are the evaluation reports. Of course, you want to look over them and make sure it's a good picture of your child. You know, it does describe your child well, the evaluation. The PLAF is going to be a draft, which means it's not set in stone. It's something that they've come up with that talks about your child's present levels of academic and functional performance, which, you know, what can they do now? What do they need help with? And then you want to also ask for copies of their proposed or draft IEP goals and objectives. So you want to see all that beforehand because you want to make sure everything links together. You want to make sure that all the areas of need are reflected in the PLAF, and then there are goals and objectives to address those, because that's what they're going to be working on all through the year.
Did that answer your question? But the
Ok, oh, sí, gracias. Y otra cosa es, por ejemplo, disculpen que me extiendan, pero esa es una duda que tengo muy presente. Por ejemplo, en el momento de la evaluación, una hora que yo llevé a mi hijo, o cuando lo llevé, estaban 4 personas para evaluarlo, ¿verdad? La speech therapy.
I'm sorry to keep going, but this is a doubt that I have, a question that I really need to ask. When I took my child for the evaluation, there were 4 people in the room, and she's going, hang on a second.
Ajá. Esa hora que ellos observaron a mi hijo son unas personas que él no conoce. O sea, él a lo mejor no va a hacer todo lo que él sabe hacer o lo que él hace. Esa única evaluación es la que toman en cuenta para decir y dar el reporte de todo lo que ellos vieron en mi hijo.
Okay, so he stayed in that room with those 4 people that he doesn't know for an hour. Now, it is possible that during that hour, he didn't do any of some of the things that he's capable of doing because he was in an unfamiliar place with people he didn't know. Is that the only basis they're going to make their determinations based on that hour that they were looking at him? Is that it?
they didn't allow mom to be in the room with him? No.
Sí, sí. Aló, sí, yo estuve ahí, pero, o sea, esa hora nada más basta con una sola vez que ellos lo vean, ellos ya hacen esa evaluación.
No, I remain in the room, but that
Okay.
hour that they used to look at him, observe him, is that it? Is that the only
Well,
evaluation?
no, there should be, I don't know what they did in that hour, but they should tell you what tests and what evaluations they are performing on your child. And thank you, Rocio. We'll see you on Wednesday. So yes, in that hour, they should be telling you what they're doing.
Well,
I
she would have
can't-
had to consent for that. She would have
Right,
had a
right.
form where she consented for specific evaluations.
Exactly, but I don't know what evaluations they did. I would think it would take more than an hour.
Yeah, I mean, if she's concerned, of course, she can always ask for an IEE.
Right, and ask for an independent evaluation. And she puts that in writing to the school.
Ok, gracias.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
you are welcome. So everyone, I will send you the slides and I will send you the survey link. Please, please, please answer it. I'm sorry, I don't have it. I will see you all. We will see you on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Isn't that SACE? Yeah, SACE. And then what, because it's 7:30, why don't we save your questions? You can put them in the survey and then we will make sure that we address your questions on Wednesday night. I thank you all so much. Leslie thanks you. Christina thanks you. Thank you, Edgar. We are so happy that you all joined us, really. Muchas, muchas gracias. And Myrna and Anna Maria, if you could stay on, please. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you, Jessica. Our pleasure.
And you can always call family to family to
Yes.
get questions answered.
Muchas gracias, Sandra. Thanks, William. Bye, Jessica. Angie, so happy you joined us. Thank you. We'll see you Wednesday. Our pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Okay, let me stop recording.